thank you to all of you for joining us this evening. Catherine, we do these webinars every month, and they sit as a sort of a bank of information for practitioners. So we get some people joining us on the night, and some people then going back and watching them, on our YouTube channel as a reference moving forward as well. So there's kind of a mix of audience. I'll let Catherine introduce herself properly, but you might know her as a sporty dietitian on Instagram. She's a nutritionist, yoga instructor, and wellbeing trainer. And she has a podcast as well, but I'll let her fill you in, and we'll put all the links to those on the notes at the end as well. Just before we start, guys, I think we're in and around the date for the equine premises registration for DERA as well. So we did do a webinar on that a couple of months ago, and I think that's coming up within the next couple of days. So if you haven't filled in those forms, sort of legally you'll be required to within the next couple of days. So take a look at that if you haven't already, and if we can help you, just holler, that's no problem. So probably I'll just do a wee bit of context as to why I thought Catherine would be a really great addition to our kind of webinar schedule this evening. It's no surprise to anybody on this call, I imagine, that we have had the wettest, coldest, horriblest January in the history of Northern Ireland. And it's just, when you're working with horses, there are no days off, and you've got to be out, you've got to be completely committed. You're doing the same routine every single day. And then you might have work on top of that, family on top of that, all of those different things. And particularly in the winter, where your manual labour around the horses is so much more intense, and you're doing all of those repetitive exercises over and over again, whether it's groundwork or ridden work. Old injuries flare up, it's cold, it's hard, you've got all of these things to work through and no real option as to whether you do it or not. So we're kind of trying to provide you here through Catherine with some tools to maximise your nutrition so that you've got enough energy to make it through those physical tasks, but also then on the mental side of what you're doing within the delivery of equine assisted services. It's such a front facing career, you're permanently on, whether that's engaging with the clients, checking that the horses are all doing and behaving as you would like them to be, or keeping your eye out for any risk and stuff. And you're very, very sort of emotionally on during the sessions, and then physically on when you're out of the sessions. So there's no real kind of break. And then I guess the other side of it is you've got to promote your business. Quite a lot of the practitioners would be self-employed, and a sort of, they've got to do the promotion, the accountancy, all of that background stuff, which again takes time and effort, and you've got to be pretty sharp in terms of your keeping your brain firing for all of those things. And then once you enter that lovely world of social media, there's so much stuff thrown at you around supplements for horses, but more so supplements for humans. I mean, there's collagen, creatine, protein coming at me in every single post at the minute. And I did see, Catherine did share a thing the other day which said that, there's some countries are looking at legislation onto who can actually publish under this kind of well-being in the social media space, which is quite exciting to see. You've actually got to have a qualification to speak out about this, which is really reassuring. But we're going to bypass that. We're going to bring Catherine straight to you guys. So I'm going to let her take over. And away you go, Catherine. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks so much for the warm welcome and the lovely introduction, and actually just hearing a little bit about, the work that you guys do, because it helps me understand your demands and how, your occupation is essentially exercise. For a lot of, individuals I work with a high output, it's, you're matching that, but yours is through work. So yeah, it's really interesting. But yes, as Molly had said, my name is Catherine, and I've been a registered dietitian now coming on 12 years. and I'm also a yoga teacher. So, you know, I suppose from studying nutrition, you know, from 12 years ago, I've been really into the science and understanding the way that food works and supports us. But I suppose as I've got older, I also understand that we need to have outlets to help them, you know, relax our nervous system and support stress reduction and things like that too. So I'm, you know, all about that, zooming out and understanding our health as a 360-degree approach and understanding nutrition as one pillar of many. So yes, I am really into sort of that side of things too. I'm also a mum. I am an occasional runner, but just like you said, Molly, I'm thinking about throwing in the towel at the minute because you see this rain has just, I think for most of us all, just given up, to be honest. And it's just there's no good days ahead by the sounds of things. My mum told me today that we're expecting rain until the weekend, so that's not what I wanted to hear, and it's not what you guys want to hear either. So yeah, I suppose the work that I do is geared around supporting individuals either at a one-to-one level, or I do a lot of group talks and sessions, and it's really about making nutrition, you know, it's giving you the science, but in a really easy to understand way. And it's also reducing all the noise that you see, as you mentioned, on social media, and trying to tell you what you actually need and reassure you as well that most of us are probably doing okay. So yeah, I have a little bit of a PowerPoint today just to keep me on track and to make sure that I suppose I say everything that I want to say. But if you have any questions, you know, you can unmute and ask me as we move through, or if you want to pop them in the chat and I'll answer them at the end, that is totally cool. So I'll share my screen and then we can get started if that's okay. So here we go. I'm just going to go into my share mode, and then hopefully you can see this version, the one without the notes. Good. Not that I can see the notes anyway, I'm only one screen tonight. So yeah, and I really enjoyed the actual title of this because it's, you know, it is about protecting your strength, and especially the job that you guys do. It's a lot of manual labor work. It's a lot of strength-based training. You know, we have to be very, you know, switched on with your energy management because, as Molly said, like many of you probably have other jobs going on or other activities. You have to be very cognitively switched on for the safety side. And also, it's something you obviously enjoy. So, we really want to ensure that you enjoy each day, and you know, food should bring you joy and it should bring you that energy that you need. So yeah, let's get into it. So I like to do a little bit of assessment for most of the sessions that I do, really just to get a bit of a pulse point into kind of where everyone is at. So this is something you do in your head, or if you have a notebook you can write it down. So I would like you just to make your way through each of these questions. There's 2 pages of them, so there's about 8 or 9 in total. So I'll let you have a read through in your own time. For question 4, you're likely doing all your exercise through work. I actually was thinking that when I was doing it. So it might be an easy win for you there, that question 4. You might be in the A category given the nature of your work. Okay, happy enough? Everyone finished that first slide?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, happy and move on. Okay, and then just this is the last one. Wee bit more here.
And it's been interesting actually, Catherine, seeing in the last probably 5 to 10 years, there's been a real movement within the kind of equestrian community towards, you know, training as well as the physical work with the horses, and how, you know, doing your strength training, doing your yoga, doing your Pilates and stuff like that really feeds into helping you with your ridden piece, with the physical stuff. But again, that's another demand on your body, I guess, that you just need to make sure you're covered. So it's great that everyone's looking at that, but it's just making sure you support it as well, because there's a lot of you know, and you kind of hear about the 10,000 steps, you know, and stuff, and you know, when you're out with the horses, you know, you've 20,000 steps done in a day, you know, before you do anything else. So It's interesting.
It is interesting, yeah. So we're not just looking for cardio, like you mentioned, the walking. We're looking the strength focused style training as well, specifically for women, because one of the key issues we're facing right now in the nutrition space is osteoporosis and osteopenia. So that would be people who are like falling and having, hip replacements and hip fractures, which is quite a lot of our older generation. And now we're speaking about out loud about it a bit more. So yeah, so right. And I think it is important. Like I know, albeit you are probably very time deficient because the time you get given is probably spent, out with the horses. But doing strength-based exercise in a kind of intentional way can help prevent injuries, can get your body used to the load in a safe way, so that your posture's better, that you're used to carrying awkward, objects maybe on one arm versus. So I can see why it is really important for you guys, just to prevent, for prevention of injuries. But it is just balancing. It's getting that sweet spot where it doesn't stress you out.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Yeah.
but you're getting enough. And I think just, doing your best and taking, we call it imperfect action. Not every day is going to be perfect with steps and exercise. So yeah. Okay, so hopefully while I was chatting, some of you were able to kind of get the rest of that done. So we looked at sleep, we looked at protein, alcohol, stress, and fats as well. So, okay, final, just then in terms of results, if you're ticking the mostly A's box, you're doing really well, and you've good, future proof around health, and you've good awareness around your habits overall. If you're in the B category, you're doing okay. We may need to make some tweaks, and it's things I'm going to talk about now. So if you're not already on your vitamin D supplement, that's definitely something we need in the winter months for not only our mood, but our whole musculoskeletal system, so your muscles and your bones. We're going to talk about fiber and how that's so important for women for hormone health, but also for you guys for energy management to control those blood sugar levels and stop them going up and down. And also we're going to look at plant fats and how that's really important too. And then processed meats, alcohol, and managing stress is something we just need to be mindful of. And processed meats are, for example, they're your bacon, your sausages, your burgers. They're all the lovely things, the ham. And the reason that's up there is because the World Cancer Research Fund recommends they're basically a type 1 carcinogen. So they're in the same group as cigarettes. And I don't think a lot of people are aware as the risk factor with processed meat. So it's just something to be aware of. If you have lots of burgers and sausages and ham, bacon, that sort of food on a weekly basis, it's just, you know, swapping it out every so often for something else. Okay, we'll talk about that. And then if you're in the C's, definitely need a wee bit more attention here. And it's not to shame or blame, it's just about awareness and making small tweaks. So again, your vitamin D, we're going to look at fiber, color, fats, alcohol, stress, and then we're going to look at exercise. Not too much, not too little. It's what we call the Goldilocks zone. Do you remember the Goldilocks? Hopefully everyone
Yeah.
does the not too hot, not too cold. And that's what we're aiming to do with exercise, not stress us out, stress our bodies out, but having enough for our bodies to make adaptations that are positive. Okay. So um, my ethos is really just trying to create your best self through nutrition, exercise, sleep, and stress, and they all balance each other out. So you can't have the perfect diet and not be sleeping well or not exercise and be really stressed. It's so important that I suppose we pay attention to all these pillars. And a really good example of this, I have a 1-year-old at home, and he sometimes will be up through the night. I notice when I don't get a great night's sleep, that impacts on how hungry I am, and also I'm more likely to crave caffeine and sugar. So they're all interconnected too. If I don't sleep well, I don't really want to exercise and I'm maybe more stressed. So it's just about understanding that they're all connected and just doing your best on each pillar each day as well, because that's what our health is really find the foundations of your health is based on. And, as I've already alluded to, remember that your work is athletic, and we call this occupational physical therapy, whereby the reason I say this is because we need to treat the work that you do like an athlete, and we need to make sure that you're fueling well from that perspective to reduce, these sugar crashes and dips, but also just to make you, maybe cognitively switched on, to just do your best at the work that you do too. So nutrition is so important for you guys because it helps you give you energy through the day, and particularly breakfast and lunch. You know, most people don't get energy from dinner. It's more like their fullness, and it depends if you're working or you're going out late, which you might be doing after dinner and things. But most people get their energy from their breakfast and lunch meals, and maybe some snacks in between, because that's your fuel through the day. And then it also supports your mood. And I'm going to talk about sort of certain nutrients that support your mood, but the top two would be vitamin D. And we're all deficient right now because we're not getting any sun. And the other one would be omega-3 fats. So they're a type of fat that we would get from the likes of salmon or chia seeds or flaxseed or walnuts. And they help keep our brain really fluid and like juicy, we would say, and really responsive to dopamine and serotonin, which are those lovely hormones that we get when we're happy. It also supports your injury prevention. Underfueled individuals are more likely to be injured, especially females, because it starts to impact our hormone health. And that's the next slide too, if you're not feeling well. And particularly around that post-menopause phase, because women are more vulnerable in terms of obviously the more symptoms, but also your estrogen's declining, meaning your bone mass can be weaker or speed up in terms of the speed you lose it. Your muscle mass speeds up in terms of how much you're losing. There's so many other things that we need to account for here. So yeah, your hormone health as well is really important. And then just from a longevity, you want to be doing this work for as long as possible, hopefully. So that's really important, that you eat the right things and fuel your body enough. And it's so much more than your weight. I think as women, we're sold that food is just about what you look like. And I really try and steer people I work with, and even groups that I do, away from that way of looking at food, and fostering a much more positive relationship with food and than a negative one. And how I do that is, the first thing, I'm just going to give you some simple tips that you can hopefully adapt straight away, is, again, as women, we're sold this package of trying to be smaller, what to cut out. As Molly had said, what supplement to buy next, spend all our money on all these bloody supplements that don't work. And it's a very exclusion style mindset. So we're cutting out the bread, we're cutting out the carbs, we're cutting out the sugar, and we'll have nothing left we can eat, to be honest. And it's, again, very negative, the way that we look at food. So instead, when I work with individuals, I really try to remind them to focus on an inclusion mindset, and whereby you're thinking to yourself, every meal that you have, what can I add in here? And what you find over time within this inclusion lens, that you naturally displace some of the stuff, like some of the food that you want to, like maybe you are eating a bit more sugar or a bit more fat or whatever it is than you want. But if you're focusing on adding in the right stuff, you eventually start to reduce the stuff that you want to reduce anyway, but without the kind of negative way of doing it, okay, or without that kind of punishment mindset. So that's one of my favorite tools to use, is that inclusion mindset. Um, and especially for you guys, we really need to be ensuring that we're firstly eating regularly. So, it might not be the same times every day, but at least you're giving your body, drip feeding your body that energy throughout that day. And this is kind of the checklist that I would use when I work with people. It's firstly, choose a high fiber base. So trying to, if you can and don't mind the taste of the whole grain option. So for example, breakfast, it could be oats, or it could be Weetabix, or it could be like a granola, going for maybe a lower sugar one to help stabilize the sugar. If it's lunch, it could be like a seeded bread or sourdough bread, but you're adding in lots of fiber on top. And maybe for dinner, it could be potatoes, the skin's on, sweet potato. It could be pasta, brown pasta. And again, it's okay to go for the white versions occasionally as well. That's fine. It's not saying they're bad either, but it's just saying most of the time, if you can go for that whole grain fiber base, you're doing great. I never recommend people cut carbs. And especially for you guys, that is your fuel. That is your bread and butter for giving your brain that energy to think quickly, but also your body the energy to physically do the physically demanding tasks that you need to do. Okay. And carbs are delicious. Like no one wants to eat no carbs in life. They're my favorite thing always on a plate, at meal times. So, it's really about getting the portion size right. And often what it is with carbs, it's what's missing on the plate for a lot of people. That's usually the key challenge. Um, the second thing I look out for then is too bright colors, and this can be transformational for a lot of people. It's looking at each plate and asking, how can I get two bright colors on this plate? Okay, and beige doesn't count because beige is always your carb. Beige is delicious, potatoes and your bread and all, but it's not your fruit and veg, and that's what the bright colors is about. It's trying to get lots of fruit and veg on board. Um, the other thing I try to really encourage is a plant fat at as many meals as possible. So an example of this is your flaxseed at breakfast. For lunch, it could be avocado, or for dinner, it could be your extra virgin olive oil, you're cooking with. And an example then of animal fats. So animal fats are the likes of your cheese. They're the likes of maybe your butter in your pastries and butter itself. And whilst animal fats are fine on occasion, they are the one thing that is high in saturated fats that increase cholesterol over time. So it's just about, again, being mindful and just swapping or making small swaps where you can. And then the last thing I will say with women specifically, it's just making sure that you have a protein source at every meal. I know a lot of women are really sick of hearing about protein because we're just told to eat more protein and that's it. And that's why I start with fiber, because I feel like actually a lot more people are deficient in fiber than they are protein. So 93% of us in Northern Ireland don't eat our fiber recommendation. And fiber is really important for hormone clearing. So basically, when we have excess hormones in our blood, like estrogen and things lying about, it's the fiber that excretes it out of the body. Like, so it's moved to the gut and then the fiber excretes it. So when people are even, I suppose, having hormone issues or fluctuations, I generally recommend they go on a higher fiber diet and see how that goes. Fiber also keeps your energy nice and stable, keeps you full for longer. So there's lots of benefits to fiber too. This is an example of my lovely online group at the minute, and we're doing a challenge of two bright colours in every meal. And I love sharing real food because I feel like sometimes when on like Instagram or social media, there's these perfectly beautiful chef style, I don't know, 5-star whatever looking meals, and you look at your own plate and you think, flip me, look at this, like I've only got spuds and some peas on it. So sometimes it's really nice to see real food and to get real food ideas. And honestly, like these ladies, it's really simple food for them. It's, they're having their porridge in the morning, but they're thinking about how can I add the two colours in. They're again having their potatoes with maybe a piece of meat or salmon and adding the two colours. And again, they might already have been adding one, but maybe just not adding the two. There's a turkey burger there, but instead of maybe having loads more potatoes, she's just added a corn on the cob, which I thought was quite smart. And then there's someone's lovely breakfast as well with lots of colour. So just an example of how to elevate your meals a little bit more. Simple, but so effective. Um, the other thing that research shows, and again, this is all about the inclusion stuff, it's about looking at your week, your food across a week and seeing if you're getting 30 different plants a week. And I know that can sound crazy. You're thinking, what? I could never get 30 different fruit and veg, but that not only fruit and veg counts, nuts and seeds count. So if you're adding, like if you're adding mixed nuts into things or mixed seeds, maybe you're mixing some chia and pumpkin and whatever else together and had throwing that into breakfast or a yogurt or something, each individual seed counts as something different. So, you could be adding 3 or 4 different seeds in. And then similarly with nuts, if you're having mixed berries, as an example, like maybe you're using frozen berries and there's a medley of like blackberries, raspberries, strawberries, each one individually counts as something different. All your veg counts, your beans counts, and legumes, and they're great to add in at least once a week. So that's, like tins of chickpeas, lentils, butter beans, or mixed beans. And I generally add them into I would add like a tin of chickpeas into curry, just to bulk it out, can do lunch the next day. Or you could add a tin of lentils or beans into a chili or a bolognese, even just again to bulk it out a bit more. And then other things that counts, herbs and spices count. And on this wee infographic, though, the only thing I would say is it says 0.25 plant points. So someone's only giving you a quarter of a plant point, but I would give you a full plant point. If you're adding in a good dose of cinnamon or garlic or chili flakes or cumin, that is brilliant. You're starting to cook a bit more from scratch and rely probably less on, ultra processed foods or things like that too. And it's totally fine to have sauces in jars and all that. That's fine too. But if you can think about certain spices and herbs to add because they're very powerful in our diet as well. Each whole grain counts. So, for example, if you're having oats, if you're having seeded bread, if you're having brown pasta, that all counts as an individual one. And then the final thing is a plant-based drink. So if you are a plant-based drinker, if maybe you can't tolerate cow's milk and you're choosing oat, almond, soy, that sort of thing, then that also counts too. So across the week, you might be doing better than you think. And it could be a wee challenge. I would recommend certain people, especially if gut health is a priority, keep a note section in your phone and document all the different plants across the week and see if you get 30 or, give yourself a little target and see. And one way I try to do this, and it's only because I have a 1-year-old at home as well, I try to buy a mystery fruit or veg each week. So it's something a little bit different than I would normally buy. So you add it to your trolley and it encourages you to learn to cook with it, but it also gives you something like a different plant point in your diet. Okay, so that's something you could think about. And then these are examples of things you could add, to your weekly shop if you are wanting to add more variety. If you don't mind fish, I know a lot of people are not big fish lovers, that's fine. If you don't love the likes of salmon, so specifically salmon, mackerel, sardines, herring, and trout are the fatty, oily fish that are so high in omega-3, beautiful for the brain, really good for mood function. But I know a lot of people don't love that sort of fish. So if you don't, the next best thing would be chia seeds or flaxseed or walnuts. Okay. And if you don't have a portion of oily fish once or twice a week, I would recommend you try to have flaxseed or walnuts in at least once a day, just to get that omega-3 fat. Other things you could add in, specifically for women, at lunchtime, I really highly recommend that you could try and get a leafy green in. Okay, so usually people at lunchtime will have things like sandwiches, wraps, pittas, like something really maybe quick on the go, or maybe you're having leftover dinners or something like that. Swapping from lettuce to a dark green leaf is excellent because they're packed with iron, which is one of those nutrients women are continually low on, but also B12 and folate, which are the two energy boosting vitamins. So iron, B12, and folic acid are kind of the three biggest energizing nutrients, which again, a lot of us can be deficient in. So if you add a leafy green in each lunch or any meal really, but lunch seems to be the easier one to get it into, that will make such a difference to your diet as well. So that's rocket and spinach, okay, or broccoli counts, kale counts, and bok choy counts too. Okay, berries are brilliant for antioxidants. Kiwis are amazing for gut health. If anyone's any issues with constipation or just feeling backed up or a little bit sluggish, 1 to 2 kiwis a day is amazing. I cannot stress that enough. Now, I say that lightly because apparently when I give talks to people, the sell out of kiwis in different areas, local areas. I was giving a talk in Bangor there a few months ago, and a woman messaged me to say she couldn't get her hands on a kiwi anywhere, and it must have just been.
Brilliant.
So I'm not to blame if you can't get your hands on kiwis, but they are amazing. There's research even to show their benefits in sleep. So 1 to 2 kiwis before bed. Well, this is the thing here. You don't want to eat too close to bedtime, so it's usually like an hour or two before bed. If you struggle to sleep, have a kiwi or two and see if that has any impacts. There's some research on that too, not only for gut health, so for sleep. Seeds then, avocado. So avocado is high in vitamin E and it's also really high in fiber. I know it's quite high in calories. A lot of people are aware that it's a fat. So half an avocado is a portion. So just be mindful of that because I know it can be very easy to overconsume with avocados. Um, Oats are amazing for us as well if you don't mind porridge or overnight oats, even soaked. If you can go for the jumbo style, it's even better because it is more fiber than like the little pots you can get like of more powdered oats. They just have less fiber added, or like, well, they're just stripped more of the fiber. So if you don't mind going for the jumbo, that's a great one. The nuts are also really good. And again, small portion. I'm not talking about the KP nuts. I know we're all into like the salted nuts and the ones you get with a wee glass of wine.
Yeah.
I always have to disclaim that because a lot of people say that girl just told me away go to eat more nuts. So the unsalted versions, if possible. And the other things, dark chocolate's really high in polyphenols. So there's lots of research coming out. Now 85% is not for everyone. 70% or more has the benefits. So if you like something sweet, try a bit of dark chocolate. I know at the beginning, if you're not used to it, it can taste very bitter, but you can retrain your taste buds to get used to less sugary stuff. But it does take a lot of time, so just bear with it. If you're used to your dairy milk and you're trying to eat dark chocolate, it can take a wee bit of time to get there. Has anyone ever heard of kefir?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Do you take it, Molly? Do you?
Occasionally, I don't love it. I'm not going to lie. But
Yes.
yeah,
You've heard of it. Yeah.
yeah.
And the reason why you probably don't love it is, for anyone that doesn't know, it's a fermented milk drink. So it tastes a wee bit sour or bitter. So the way that I like to use it with people is mix, like buy a bottle maybe a week, but mix it into Greek yogurt or regular yogurt. So you don't need to have it on its own. I like to make a yogurt cocktail with it. So I will pour a little bit into like whatever yogurt I'm using. So you can't actually taste the sourness of it. And you don't need loads in one sitting. So like even one big bottle could do you a couple of weeks as well. Um, and you can feed it to kids and all of that stuff too. So it is brilliant. And the reason why it's really good is because it's high in probiotics, which are little bacteria for the gut. So the way I like to explain it is we have little soldiers that live in our gut, and every soldier loves a different food. And if you don't feed that soldier its food, it dies off. Okay. So that's why a lot of us actually can suffer with quite poor gut health because our soldiers are getting smaller and smaller. We're not maybe getting the variety that our gut needs to grow the soldiers. And what kefir does is it adds more soldiers into the gut, basically. So more gut bugs are getting in. So it's really beneficial for people like even with IBS or with any digestive issues, but go slow. Don't be down in a bottle in one go, is what I would say as well. And then sourdough, again, if you can go for the seeded version, it's really good, fermented and soft and gentle in the tummy. And then extra virgin olive oil as well is a really great thing to add in as it's high in polyphenols. So lots of foods that we can add in, guys. Again, this is what I try to focus on. I've already spoken about fiber, so I'll not spend too long here. And I really just want to highlight that it's trying to get as many fiber superstars in your diet as possible. So kiwi's a fiber superstar, berries is a can I speak? A fiber superstar. Um, Seeds, let's see what else, like even granolas, they're going for the lower sugar one if you can, because they've got like the big jumbo oats and seeds. Um, Adding in nuts or seeds each day can get you that fiber. Going for the 30 plants, I spoke about that, and two bright colors. So all those kind of little tips and hacks can really help you to get that fiber in that you need. And that really supports with energy, but also with our sugar and hormones. Really, what's important for you guys is ensuring that you're eating regularly. So one of the biggest triggers for binge eating or overeating at night is not fueling enough through the day. And given the nature of the work that you guys do, it's so laboring on the body that it's likely that you are coming in after a long day, starving, like very low in energy, probably wanting the sugary treats in the cupboard, which is I totally appreciate. So what's really important for you is making sure your protein is well spaced evenly throughout the day. So you're not having something, you're not skipping breakfast and then grabbing something at 11 and then maybe having something small for lunch, like a bowl of soup, and then, not getting anything to dinner. Just really try to make an effort to space the protein evenly. So having a decent protein at breakfast, now it doesn't have to be 7, it can be whatever time you have your breakfast at. Good protein at lunch, have a small protein snack to bridge the gap for the next meal. So like a baby bell, could be a yogurt, could be a little nut and seed bar, whatever it is for you. Even a protein shake if you don't mind those. And then again, dinner, and then you might have something small at supper time as well. Okay. So some examples of breakfast using that nourishing framework. So we've got our whole grain base, that's your oats. Now, if you don't like oats, it could be Weetabix, it could be all bran, it could be granola. Just again, being mindful of the portion size and think about what you can add in. So we've got the two bright colors there from the berries. We could add a tablespoon of flaxseed in for our plant fats, and then we could add in some protein. So it could be some Greek yogurt, it could be some protein powder. And the other thing as well you could add in is, oh, that should have been, oh my goodness, cinnamon. I'm only saying that as brown cloves. Oh my goodness, I copied and pasted the wrong thing. Don't put cloves into your porridge, please. It might, I don't know what that would taste like. Do you know what? I didn't even see the writing there and I just assumed that was cinnamon. So yeah, there's me caught out. But cinnamon is a brilliant herb to steady the sugar levels in the blood. So anybody with, for example, diabetes or PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, where you might have some insulin resistance, cinnamon, if you don't mind the taste of it, is excellent to add into either yogurts or breakfast or sweet foods, because it can help to really slow the release of sugar into the bloodstream. And especially for you guys, that's what you need, that steady release. So no cloves, just cinnamon, all right? And then just some wee ideas for you is, you know, for breakfast, especially if you're on the go, overnight oats is a great one. And I know not some people don't like the overnight oats, and that's fine too. We can find something different for you. There's the gut yogurt bowl. So that's something, again, I mentioned kefir there. So mix your kefir in with your yogurt and you can add some kiwi as well and berries. That would be really good for the gut as well if anyone has any gut issues. Instead of the overnight oats, you could do a Weetabix base. There's, you know, you could have avocado, eggs, unseeded toast if you prefer a more savory breakfast. Cottage cheese is great. Like if you don't have time, especially if you guys are in and out and wanting to grab something quick, you don't mind the texture of cottage cheese. It is a bit lumpy, I get that, but it's really high protein and good calcium levels. And you could add some cherry tomatoes and toast, add that onto some toast. Or you could make some French toast where you dip your bread into eggs and then just fry it with some, and then add some yogurt and fruit on top. So just some wee quick ideas. Lunch then, you know, most people I work with have some sort of sandwich or soup or pita or leftovers, and that's totally fine. But make sure that you've got your two bright colors in there. Use things like Greek yogurt for dressings and mix in some lemon juice, you know, like squeezed lemon, and you know, try to make a preppable protein filling that'll do 2 to 3 days for you. So you can throw it into pittas, you can put it in a sandwich, you can bring a wrap, you know, if you're working somewhere else. So just try to make sure that they're really filling lunch and lots of fiber in there too. And it could be a soup as well. If you know, batch make your soup. If you're going for a salad, make sure it's hearty, not just a few lettuce leaves. We want to see things like maybe potatoes, like, you know, new potatoes with skins on. Maybe you want chickpeas in there, eggs, tuna. So just something that's quite filling. All right. And then snacks. You might be thinking, Catherine, you have not spoken about snacks. So I know what to eat for breakfast, lunch, and other meals, but what about snacks? And this is where it gets interesting. So one of my tips for snacks for women, especially throughout the day, okay, if you can, rather than going for the biscuits, I know they're so tempting and delicious and they're fine to have. If you are even going for something sweet, try to pair it with something high in protein and fiber, because that will help stabilize the sugar levels. It also helps keep you fuller, because I don't know about you, but after 2 chocolate digestive biscuits, I just want 2 more. It doesn't really fill me. And an hour later, I'll definitely be back into the cupboard looking an additional couple of biscuits. But you're trying to get snacks that will keep you full for at least 2 hours. Like that's the goal of snacks. So examples could be Baby Bells. Now, what's great about Baby Bells is they're actually lactose free. So anybody that is lactose intolerant can have Baby Bells. And you can have, so try to pair something high in protein with something fruit, you know, based as well, like a piece of fruit. So there's your kiwi and your Baby Bell, or you could go for grapes and a Baby Bell. If you're going for a yogurt, throw in some berries with it or a banana. And nut and seed bars, great for you guys, especially maybe if you're on the go. They can be handy things to have in the car or in your bag or in your lunch bag. Also, nuts are another one if you're not allergic to them. And pair it with a piece of fruit, or my favorite is a little handful of nuts and a bit of dark chocolate is also a nice wee afternoon snack. If you're genuinely hungry, like even a slice of seeded toast, some peanut butter and banana, even, you know, if you're not getting your dinner for until later on and you're going out again and doing a bit of work, manual labor work, a slice of toast is great. Like that's something I would recommend someone eats before a run. And remember that the work that you do is so demanding on the body. And then milky coffees with dates, and then again yogurts as well. So that is just a couple of things that I recommend. And then the final thing before I just talk about supplements, I'm okay for time, Molly, am I? Or am I running over a wee
No,
bit?
you're not. Yeah, you're fine.
Okay, okay, just a couple more, just this and then supplements. So um, I know bedtime, a lot of people like something sweet, myself included. So I'm not the food police. And again, I never tell people to not eat something. I think it's really about creating healthy boundaries, and it's also about food pairing. That can be really helpful for people at nighttime if you struggle with overeating with chocolate or biscuits or whatever it is. So food pairing is trying to pair again, something a bit more satiating with something sweet or whatever it is that you like. Maybe it's a packet of crisps. I know people like savory stuff. So, for example, if you're having like dairy milk, can you pair it with some Greek yogurt and berries, and you can maybe add a bit of honey? So you're getting the fullness and the fiber and the protein, and then you're having that little bit of chocolate. So you're less inclined to go back and have more chocolate. Similarly, there's a hot chocolate with some nuts, a bowl of cereal. So if you want actually something, if you're really hungry, I would say have something a bit more satisfying. Um, uh, some apple with peanut butter. There's a couple of biscuits again with some Baby Bell, and it can also be helpful to finish with the higher protein one, like have the sweet stuff first and then that. And there's research to show again that can reduce going back and having more sweet stuff because again the taste is kind of erased from the mouth, but you have them in whatever order you want. Energy, just hunger and energy needs to stay nice and steady for you. So avoid getting really hungry. Okay. So this is what we call the hunger fullness scale. And I would, I've been in the red before, all you can do, all you want is food and you want any type of food. It doesn't matter. You'll want the big pizza and you'll want the McDonald's or whatever the biggest, most filling thing is that you'll want. And similarly with fullness, you want to avoid eating till you're really uncomfortable. Okay, so you should be able to get up and go for a walk after meals. That's the sensation in the tummy. So you want a little bit of pressure, but you're not like Christmas Day where you're wanting to lie down after it. So you want to make sure you're within that kind of three in terms of when you feel hungry, you need to eat something, and then stop eating when you feel satisfied, but you don't feel really heavy and sluggish. All right. And then some sample days of eating, just so there's someone with yogurts and oats and berries and stuff, eggs on toast for lunch, and then a stir fry. It was actually like hoisin chicken thing with rice, and then snack was milky coffee and a date and a kind bar. So that's just a sample day of how much you should be eating to fuel. And that's again, you probably, if you're doing exercise on top of that, you probably need extra fuel in there. Definitely extra carbs. So there's 2 slices of toast under here and plenty of carbs at breakfast as well. So don't be cutting your carbohydrates out either. There's rice under there. No, you can't actually visually see a lot of this, but it's just giving you some sample days for meals. And then the thing about supplements is I really try to recommend that only one supplement you actually need is vitamin D. And that's it. Okay. And the reason being you cannot get that from food. Okay. And it is essential vitamin in the body for you guys because it helps you absorb your calcium. So essentially, we call this a musculoskeletal supplement. So important as we age. Okay. So if you're not on your vitamin D, add it to your shopping list. It doesn't matter where you get it. You can get it in Tesco's, Asda, Sainsbury's. You can get it in a pharmacist. You can get it in Home Bargains. I don't care as long as you get one and you start taking something somewhere between 10 to 25 micrograms, which most vitamin D supplements have. And then the only other things I recommend if you're vegan, maybe B12. Obviously, if you're low in iron, you've probably maybe spoken to your doctor too. You might need to use iron intermittently if you're low to get the stores back up. If you don't like fish, you could consider an omega-3 supplement. Now, I recommend people try to get chia seeds, flaxseed, and walnuts into them first before I go down that omega-3 supplement route. Magnesium can be really, really helpful for women for sleep, especially if you're getting into bed and you feel a bit tired but wired. So if you're feeling like I'm actually really tired, but actually like I feel very restless, and you just can't maybe switch off. That could be maybe magnesium is a nervous system relaxant and a muscle relaxant. So if you feel crampy, achy, things like that, magnesium can really help, especially during perimenopause and stuff. And then other things could be maybe a multivitamin. We don't always recommend them, usually only just during pregnancy or during phases of life where maybe you're not eating the best. Protein can you be used to top up in between, and creatine, I only really recommend it to people who are lifting heavy and who actually are really interested in their performance of sport. So it's not something maybe you guys, unless you're really interested in lifting weights or you're into sprint style sports, it's not something that's necessary. I would say vitamin D alone is enough for you at the minute. Okay. So thank you so much. Sorry for running on, and
No.
delighted to be here. So thank you.
Oh no, like thank you so much for that, Catherine. It's amazing kind of level of information, but just understandable and digestible. It's kind of, so excuse the pun, but yeah, no, really great. Thank you. I'm just gonna see, does anyone have any questions there? Ashleen, do you want to run? Are there any questions for Catherine?
I'll have a look here and see.
I just I did a workshop with Catherine actually about running before Christmas, and I had thought that, you know, I was kind of eating pretty well and, you know, kind of clean, I guess, and, you know, would make all their own food and stuff. And I then really looked at the protein levels, and as my husband as well, and we were both massively under eating on the protein, and the difference it's made, it's really fascinating because you're actually really full. It doesn't feel like you're eating loads more, but just that incorporation of, you know, proper amounts of protein has made such a difference. It's really, yeah, it's really brilliant.
That's brilliant. And I think that is something for running, it's hard because you obviously are prioritizing the carbohydrates because that's obviously giving you the fuel, but it's such an impact sport running on the joints and even the work that you guys do. So protein is so important even to protect the muscles and the joints there too, Molly. So you probably will notice, yeah, such a difference just in how you're feeling and recovering. It's more recovery nutrient as well, but fullness. And it mimics, it's like why GLP-1s or like, you know, Ozempic and Manjaro are really popular. So they work on the body because they suppress the appetite. And that's what protein does. Protein is a satiating nutrient, and it works in sort of that similar way that it satisfies the body so much so that you don't want, you know, like you're full, you don't need any more. So it's really interesting you said that too. So yeah. Okay. So I don't think there's any questions, but if anyone does, please feel free, because usually I'm getting bombarded at the end. Usually the supplement one's always the one that's like, my friend takes collagen, should I be taking it? Or what about this? Because I know other things, like the big myths that come up for women is around fasting, and cortisol is another big one that's come up a lot. And what else? Yeah, they're kind of the two I get asked about quite a lot. So if anyone does, feel free to ask as well before I shoot on.
Yeah, Catherine, hi. Could I ask a question?
Yes.
I struggle a bit with keeping myself out of pre-diabetes range. So I
Okay.
struggle with the carbohydrates. I do minimize the carbohydrates certain time to
Yes.
time if I'm
Okay.
feeling. So that's that. I mean, I do eat lots of protein, but that's my problem. I have a really strong family history of diabetes.
Okay.
And I'm determined to keep myself non-diabetic, and I
Yes.
do struggle with the carbs.
Yeah, and that is a challenge because you're trying to be really mindful. But I suppose with diabetes, it's not about cutting the carbs out. It's just about ensuring that the fiber and protein are there to help make sure the blood. So what you're more, well, I would say focus your attention more is on steadying the blood sugar levels. So yes, even if you have a portion of carbohydrate, what you need to be more interested in is the fiber there to help reduce that spike. Not, I hate saying the word spike, but that's just the easiest way I can explain it. So for example, if you're having breakfast, like it's totally fine that you have the oats, but you can't maybe have like a 60 to 70 grams portion. Yours is maybe going to be more around the 40 grams. And then you're looking at adding in some chia seeds, you know, because that will slow the release down. You're maybe looking at adding a kiwi to the side. So again, it was the principles I was speaking about there. And it's not being afraid of carbs, because I support a lot of people with type 1 and type 2, but it's about really making sure that the fiber content of your meals is quite high alongside that protein, so that blunts the spike of the sugar levels, because that is what diabetes control is all about. It's not just about cutting the carbs, it's about preventing the sugar levels going up and down, and what can help with that is that fiber and protein. So using that framework I spoke about, where you are choosing the fiber rich carb, you're just being mindful of portion sizes, and then, and again, use that inclusion lens of, right, add my 2 colors, add some plant fats, and add my protein, and hopefully that should be, that is like a diabetes friendly style of eating as well. But I know what you mean as well. Even when it comes to maybe sweet treats, it's again thinking
Avoid
about
them.
yeah, that's it. I know it's really hard, and for you it could be, you have to be smart about your sweet treats and make things yourself. But even things like dates with nut butter is a good example. Yes, the dates are sweet, but the nut butter can help blunt the spike again from the fats in that, and dates are quite high in fiber. Nut and seed bars could be a good example for you. Even dark chocolate, 85%,
Yeah.
because it's less, the more cacao, the less sugar. So yeah, it's just, you've really good awareness, Evelyn, but I suppose it's just the poison's in the dose like anything, but the fiber is your best friend there for
I
managing those
do.
sugar
I do
spikes.
the walnuts, the chia seeds, the
Good.
range of nuts
Yeah.
and that. So
Yeah, it sounds like you're doing
seeds.
everything right.
Yeah.
And sadly, with diabetes, especially if it's hereditary, there's only like, it's like cholesterol too. There's maybe only so far you can manage that to a point where the genetics are there, and it can be really frustrating. But it sounds like you're doing everything right, and just making sure you're being as active as possible and keeping stress down, Evelyn. That's really important. So when you're stressed, the sugar levels go up. I had a client not so long ago who was bordering diabetes, and he was, healthy BMI, and it was actually a stressful job, and it was the sugar spikes that was, causing the sugar levels to go up. So yeah, that's something again to be mindful of, is the stress.
Okay, thanks, Catherine.
No problem. All right.
Yeah, Catherine, that's brilliant. What we'll do, we circulate the recording and then it goes up on YouTube as well, and then we'll put the links to your Instagram and website and podcasts and stuff on that too. And if you don't mind, we'll put your email on there in case anybody
Yep.
wants to get in contact with you. Is that all right with you?
Absolutely. Yeah. Because
Okay.
people sometimes have questions, so that's no problem. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
brilliant.
you.
No, that's amazing. Thank you so much. Cheers. Thanks.
All right, folks. Thank you very much. See you later. Bye bye.